Hi there, this is Kat Widder, the Wellness Coordinator for Alamo Heights ISD, and this is the virtual Breaking the Silence series, Chat with Kat. This series is designed to inform and improve communication on a variety of topics that affect our children and our community. Today, I'm joined by our District Director of Technology and Awesomeness, Jamie Lockin, and together we'll be discussing the incredibly important topic of technology and safety. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Keeping our kids safe with technology. Why is this an important topic for us to discuss? There are two very big reasons. First reason is online abuse. There are several types of online abuse that our kids might be exposed to, and so I put those examples here. Cyberbullying is one of the most common. Emotional abuse from peers, but also from adults that are posing as somebody else. Grooming, which is terrifying, but also very important that we acknowledge there are those adults that are saying they're, a 15-year-old friend when really they are grooming them to do inappropriate things or to pull them away from their families and their homes. Sexting is a very real thing that our kids are engaging in that we need to be aware of and take some preventative measures to avoid, and then also exploitation. Then next, the second reason that we're talking about this is internet addiction. And I will start by saying that this is not an addiction that shows up in the DSM-5 criteria manual for mental health disorders, but these are very real issues that our kids are struggling with and very tough to hear about. So the first one, cybersex related addictions. So that is pornography, webcam services that are available for our kids to find very easily, chat rooms that they can go in that have sex related conversations and topics happening. Secondly, gaming, which we have lots of gaming kids out there, either on PS4, Xbox, those types of platforms, but then also on the computer. And as Jamie's going to talk about, there's also a huge increase of gaming on our cell phone devices. There's lots of things available to our kids there. And then finally, online relationships can be something that becomes kind of an addiction for our kids, where they are more focused on the relationships that they're forming with people that they cannot interact with in person than they are focused on the things that are happening around them. And all three of these things are real situations that cause our kids to have the symptoms and signs of addiction. The effects on our kids of abuse that happens online are things like guilt, shame, anxiety, self-harm, eating disorders, and suicidal thoughts. So what I want to say about all of these is the online abuse is not the sole cause of any of these, but it definitely contributes to these issues that arise in our kids and possibly worsens them. And, for instance, with an eating disorder, maybe a student already has some body image issues, and then they're suffering some cyberbullying that really pushes them over the edge and they start engaging in an eating disorder. The next slide is some effects of addiction. So they are far and wide, the effects of addiction, but some of them, as they relate to the issues we're going to be talking about today, are negative relationships with everybody around them. Negative relationships develop at home, with their peers, with their teachers, decreased self-esteem, guilt and shame, and an enormous lack of motivation. When we're dealing with addiction, that's probably one of the most common ones that I see rise to the top, is a lack of motivation to engage in the things that they need to be doing, like school or other things that they're interested in. It's just apathy towards life in general. Okay, next slide. So what you can be looking for in terms of addiction or abuse are these 7 signs and symptoms. I'm not going to go over all of them. You can just look through them. They are not all necessarily going to be present in your child, but if you start seeing some of these things popping up in your child's life and that there's no other real explanation, you might consider that we have addiction or abuse happening online. So sleep problems, I just do want to point that one out. That is a really big issue for a lot of our kids right now. I will say today is October 9th. Yes, October 9th, and we are still in the middle of a pandemic. And that is important to note because a lot of our kids had very different, unique sleep patterns while we were still at home. And many of them are struggling to get back onto a regular, normal schedule. And they might be fighting it a bit too. But I wanted to point that one out. And then signs and symptoms of addiction or abuse, a really common one is anger or irritability. Everything gets on their nerves. And the reason that's important for me to note is we may dismiss it as parents. We might dismiss that one because that is also very typical of an average, healthy, developing teenager. They're angry sometimes, they're irritable sometimes, quite often. But when you look at all of these symptoms together, if you have more than one, you really need to consider that we're dealing with something other than just average, healthy, developing teenagers. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie now to talk about what preventative measures you can take so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're dealing with addiction or abuse.
Thanks, Kat. I appreciate you inviting me to be here to be a part of this experience. So I'm excited, and I'm hoping that the things that I'm going to talk about shortly here are beneficial for all of our parents, understanding that I could talk for hours and hours and hours about this particular topic because there's so many resources and so much out there. But I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet and get to the things that are most applicable in your situation. So the first one, most of our kids, not all, right? There's Android and there's iPhone, but for a lot of us, we're on mobile devices and they're Apple mobile devices. And so one of the hidden gems that came out in iOS 12, just for record, we're at iOS 14 right now, right? So it's been out for a couple of years, is screen time. And so screen time on an iPhone gives parents lots of access and lots of control that used to not have access to without a third-party program. So I do want to show you just a few things from iOS screen time. The first thing is real simple. The first thing is turn it on. So this is an actual screenshot from my cell phone. And the ages are all wrong, you know, in terms of this, because this screenshot's from 2 years ago. But I've updated the next slides. But I want you to see, like, you just simply go into your settings, right? Go into where your name is at the top, click down, scroll, go to family sharing. That's the middle slide, right? And then the last slide, you're going to go to screen time and you're going to turn it on for your family, right? And so you set up Apple Family, you get that going, you turn it on. You see now, here are my children, the 4 of them that are on there. It's going to prompt you to talk through downtime. And downtime's real simple. It's when do you want the phone to no longer allow your student to access apps anymore? At what point do you want to turn it off? So as an example, I put one of my kids' schedules on here. My kids are all different, but this student, he has football practice all the time at 6:30 in the morning. So we have different settings set, but you can see that you can customize the date, the time, the beginning, the end, all those things. And of course, you see at the bottom that at the downtime, that apps get blocked, right? So he doesn't have access to them on his phone anymore. Now, there's also app limits that you can put in there, which will prompt you when you go to set up screen time in iOS. And so I put an example of one of my kids. You can see the app limits on the very far right side of this slide. Where there are games that he likes to play, like Among Us, Minecraft, YouTube, Virtual Bagger. You see these apps that he uses. Well, we've had issues with each one of these, right? And so as we monitor his screen time and see his amount of usage, we've gone through and say, wow, you spent 2 hours one day playing Among Us. Well, we're going to go ahead and limit that. So you can still use it, but we want 10 minutes a day. Like anything more than that, and it's just addiction at that point. And so for us, each one of these that you see, PewDiePie's Simulator, all these things, these are games that he would, if left unchecked, would play for hours and get immersed in. And instead, we limit it down to the times that you see there. There is some categories too, which you see games, entertainment, and 17 more. And so those are categories where just in general, he's only allowed 3 hours of phone time in a day. So total 3 hours, but then you can go individualize and shorten the time for specific apps if you want to. So that's app limits in terms of that. You can also, and this goes to Kat's point about, it's addiction and pornography and the sexualization of the internet. You can also turn on content and privacy. And so I'm just showing you some basic settings that I have for my kids. They can't change their passcode. They can't change their account. They can't add TV providers, those kinds of things. But then when you get deeper into the content restrictions, you can then go and see. And now I can set movies, if they have access to that on their phone, like to PG-13, I can set, books to clean and those kinds of things. And then one of the important ones is this web content. And it's on the very last slide, or the very last in picture on this slide, where you can limit adult websites. And so that just should be on in general for your kids. That way they just don't accidentally run into those things. But if you look closer into that, and that's what this slide is, looking closer into it. So the very last picture on here is when I've clicked on web content, you now see limit adult websites. But then I can also add specific websites I don't want them to be able to use their phone to get to. Now, for a lot of families, they have figured out, I can set a filter on my Wi-Fi. I can go to my router at home and change this and change that. But a lot of times we forget that kids are smart and they'll just turn Wi-Fi off and use their cell phone data, right, to get where they want to go. And so this is built into the iOS. And so there's no way around it. It doesn't matter what Wi-Fi, whether it's cellular or your house or anywhere else, we can go through. So for mine, right, they have some never allows. Like I don't let them go to Discord. I don't let them go to Omegle, which is a cam chatting place. For this particular student of mine, I've blocked YouTube because there's a little bit of addiction there. So the app has 1 minute of time every day, and the website is also blocked in terms of that. Otherwise, they would spend hours on it. So you can see how this allows you through iOS's screen time to truly customize and limit times on apps, limit websites, restrict what they need to get to, and do what you can as a parent to help your student find success with having access to their device without having to take it away, and teaching them the responsibility that they need to develop at the age that they're at. Just a quick showcase. When this is actually on, you'll see these kinds of reviews, right? So this is one of my actual students. Over here at the very far left, it says, hey, they spent 2 hours and 11 minutes on their phone on Thursday, October 1st. This is the day we're looking at. And then I can go down and I can see, okay, most of it was spent on YouTube and a game called PVC Heroes and listening to music. So if I wanted to, I can then click on YouTube, go over and see the actual amount of usage and then what time of day it was. And so what I noticed is it's in the morning. This is probably before school. This is somewhere between 7:30 and 8. And then again at night, hey, it's not during school. That's good. I like that. I appreciate that. But if I'm like, no, this is a problem. Maybe this was 4 hours and it was all over the map. I just go down to the bottom where it says add limit, click there. And that's where you saw earlier where I added like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That's where it would just add a limit. And when they've hit that time, the app just grays out and they can no longer use it for that day until it resets in the morning. So just giving you controls back over your student's phone and helping them to develop some responsibility at the same time. Now, not everybody has iOS or an iPhone, right? Or an iPad, which just works for iPad and iPhone. So there are other apps too. OurPact is one that I've done some talks on around the district. Fantastic app. The things I just showed you in screen time used to not exist. And so OurPact is how I did those things. And so for our family, we've shifted a lot into using screen time. But if you have an Android, there are parental controls on Android as well. I'm not an expert in those, but OurPact definitely works well to add these filters and app rules and blocking apps and blocking internet and texting. There's all kinds of things that OurPact gives you. So that's one option. These are paid options. Another one that I know Kat has used before is Guardian, which is very similar to OurPact. It gives you some reports, some limits, some app control. So just a couple recommendations there. And then the last thing I want to do is just give you a pro tip. So if your student has an iOS device, so an iPad or an iPhone, and your house is like mine. Now, I probably have more technology than most as a director of technology, but we have this like drunk drawer that has old phones, old iPads that we have, they're either slightly broken, like a screen cracked. They still function, but they're just old and we've replaced them. Well, one of the things that I do, and this is my pro tip for you, is if your student has an iPhone, you can go into the settings, right? And that's what this picture is on the right, and go to messages and turn on iMessage, right, for your student's phone. And then you can actually turn on text message forwarding after that. Right. And so what this will do is it will actually forward messages on any device that's signed into the same iMessage account. Right. And so what we've done is we have a device set up so that when text messages come into one of our students' phones who's had some issues in the past, we have another device in our room that also receives that message. It is signed into the same iMessage account. So we see all the text messages that go out and come in. And this allows us to better keep track without jailbreaking a phone and ruining a warranty and all those things. So this is my pro tip. Like if you're using iPhone and you've got old devices, this is something I would definitely recommend you do if you have great concerns. I would also tell you that my student knows this happens. It's not a secret. We told them this happens. So that also gives them that sense of we're not lying to them or sneaking around, but we're also letting them know, hey, there is an accountability for what you send, and we can see it. And so our students are aware of that and acts differently on their messages because of that. And so I'm going to kick it back to Kat now.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up by talking about what you can do if abuse, addiction, or mental health issues are already a reality for you at home. So let's say your child comes to you or you find out, because a lot of times our kids are not telling us what's going on, what their struggles are. Let's say you find out that your child is being cyberbullied. You want to first reassure your child that they're loved and supported, because when kids are being cyberbullied, it is a very lonely experience. It's very isolating to them. So the first thing is you're loved, you're supported, we are here for you. You want to help your child step away from the device that is primarily being used, or all devices, for an extended break. Take it away if you have to. Like Jamie's saying, we have a responsibility to monitor what our kids are doing. We have a responsibility to be all up in their business. That's a safety issue. And if they don't feel like they can walk away from the devices where all of this cyberbullying is happening, then you take it away for them. If you can identify the bully, you could consider talking with the parents, if that's a feasible option. So I'm not suggesting to everybody you go straight to the parents of the bully and you talk it out. If it's an option like, hey, they used to be friends, I know the parents, let's try and talk this through, you might consider that. You also want to consider contacting your child's school to report the incident, because we have David's Law and we have a lot of things in place now to support kids at school. Consider doing that. You need to also think about empowering your child with specific steps that they can take to feel confident and strong in the moment. Like I said, it's isolating, it's lonely, it's scary in a lot of ways for kids when they're being cyberbullied. So finding ways to empower them, giving them things they can say to themselves in the moment to get through it, things they can say to the bully, are very important. Research indicates that peers sticking up for each other is a really effective defense against bullies, rather than just being a bystander watching it. If the peers step in, it decreases that feeling of isolation. So you can encourage your kiddos to reach out to their friends. You could even reach out to the friends' parents to say, hey, this is what's going on. Could you maybe consider talking to your kids to come to support my child in this time? And then I also frequently suggest therapy, because therapy is great. I think going to therapy is cool. So, I mean, I might be saying that because I am a therapist, but I do think going to therapy is cool. It's a way to help our kids. We don't need to be doing all of this by ourselves. It gives kids an opportunity to learn some new coping skills, to talk about their feelings in a safe environment. And if you are interested in that, you can always call your school counselor, because we have a lot of referrals in the area that we can share with you. OMG, my child is sexting. Okay, nobody wants that. It's not exciting. The word nudes has become a word that makes my skin crawl and makes me slightly nauseated, but it is a very common word that our kids are using, and boys are asking, send me nudes, and girls are doing it. Sometimes kids are sending it to a person unwillingly. I might have received a text message as a child that I did not ask for and is shocking. So if you find out your child is sexting or has been involved in that, my first tip, and this is my pro tip, like Jamie said, don't talk to them with anger. They aren't going to hear you, for starters. You need to calm down before you address it. Maybe take a day to calm down, 2 or 3 more days, whatever it's going to take for you to get to a place where we can rationally and logically have a conversation about this without me blaming and freaking out. So you want to ask questions like, tell me what happened. You don't want to say, why did you do this? It's very accusatory, and that shuts our kids down. So you want to say, tell me what happened, or please tell me more about this situation. If it was an online friend that we don't know as parents, we want to remind them that, again, people might not always be who they say they are. And that is a huge safety concern in this day and age. If the sexting incident or incidents involved another student, get your child's permission to let the school know. Sometimes you don't really need your child's permission, but you want to let them know so they're ready, because there's a lot of fear involved in, I got this other person in trouble. But our kids should not be engaging in this behavior. And we do need to let the school know so that we can all work together to alleviate this problem. And then my last tip on this one is, together, we are going to explore the social networks that your child is using. I'm going to do that with the child. We're going to sit together. We're going to look through. If I don't know what you're looking at, this is a very important step. And then also together, we're going to talk about safe texting behaviors. It's not just what our expectations are as parents, because as your kids get older, our expectations don't matter as much to them, which is, not a great thing as parents, but really they're trying to pave their own way and figure out what's important to them. And so it's really more about what are safe texting behaviors. It's not about what mom thinks is okay. This is just a safety issue. Okay. If you feel like your child is already in the throes of some addiction-centered issues, again, you don't want to come at them with anger. They don't actually know they're doing anything wrong. They're just surfing the web for 3 hours on YouTube. Like that's what they're doing. They don't realize what the consequences are for their brain. They don't realize what the consequences are for lack of activity outside and, any of that. They simply don't understand what the issues are or concerns are. So you want to come at them calmly again. You, with addiction, are going to have to create the boundaries for your child. They cannot at this point do it for themselves, not at least in the beginning. You're going to have to take the devices away, do all the things that Jamie went over, put all those time limits on. You're going to have to do that for them. You need to do that for them because they simply can't do it themselves. And then the hope is that they will start developing new habits, will start to feel healthier, and then they can start implementing some of those boundaries independently. And with addiction, I can't recommend therapy more. Again, you don't need to, and your child does not need to be coping with any of this alone. So consider therapy, because again, going to therapy is cool. And that brings me to, I'm concerned about mental health. Just overall, I don't entirely know what's going on, or maybe I do know that they were cyberbullied and I can't seem to get them off of their computer. And now I'm seeing all these signs and symptoms that we talked about earlier. Maybe they're sad, they're withdrawn, they've isolated, they're very irritable all the time. And I'm just really concerned that there's some mental health things going on. Start with therapy, which I'm not going to go over again, but a very, very important tip is encouraging open communication about any and all topics at home. There's a lot of shame and guilt surrounding mental health, surrounding addiction, surrounding cyberbullying, and all of those online abuse. There's a lot of shame and guilt. So if we are encouraging open communication, you can talk to me about whatever you want. And I'm going to, as a parent, be brave enough to hear what you're going to tell me. You might tell me that you've been watching way too much pornography online. And as a parent, I need to be committed to calmly listening, not freaking out. I can freak out internally, but on the outside, I'm going to listen to what you're saying so that we can work together to find a solution so that this is not a problem for you. Open communication creates a safe space for your child, and that's what they need most. Also, I'd rather that they talk to us as parents than their peers. They don't get good advice from their peers. They get good advice from adults. And then finally, remind your child that you are in this together. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm going to work through my own feelings about this whole thing, but we are in this together. Okay, and if safety is an issue, if you are worried about mental health and you're also worried about your child possibly hurting themselves or being suicidal, here's some tips for that. You don't mess around with safety. We don't want to assume that our teenagers are being dramatic. They have a flair for the drama. That is absolutely true. But if they are talking about hurting themselves, we do not assume drama. We assume they are telling us the truth. You can go to an ER, you can go to a mental health hospital, and I put 4 right there. I put the phone numbers and realized all of them end in 100. So that must be intentional for mental health hospitals. And then Sigma Urgent Mental Health is an agency that we've worked with a lot here. You would be paying out of pocket, but they have psychiatrists and mental health professionals on staff there to do immediate mental health assessments, and they can provide some services for your child until you're able to secure long-term counseling or psychiatry for your child. So those are all really good options if you're worried about safety. And then I put a quote from an author of a book about cyber parenting, and I encourage everybody to check out this book as well. The author is Mandy Majors, and she is in the area, so that's exciting too. And the quote is about communication. The solution for cyber parenting is open communication. We actually have to create a new culture of conversation in our homes. No topic can be off limits. And I'm going to remind you, it is scary, awful, and horrifying sometimes to talk to your kids about all the things that they have on their mind. But we as parents need to do that because we cannot help them or protect them if we don't know what's going on. Okay, Jamie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add for today?
No, just an encouragement that just like when you're talking about addiction and therapy and those kinds of things, that when it comes to technology, as Kat said, you should be all up in your students' business. The privacy aspect of a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, younger and older, they're still in your house, and you should definitely be monitoring what's happening. I can tell you that even with close monitoring that I do, we still find issues and we still have conversations. And sometimes, as Kat said, we don't react with anger, and other times we do react with anger, and then we have regrets. So, but the encouragement here is you have tools at your disposal, including me as the Director of Technology. And I always tell parents that this is not just me sitting here doing a presentation. I'm living this with 4 kids in the district: a 7th grader, a 9th grader, a 10th grader, and an 11th grader. And so if you need help, if you need assistance, if you're saying, Jamie, I want to do this, but I don't understand it, and then call the district technology department, ask for me, and I will certainly get with you and have a conversation. And I don't mind coming to your home. I don't mind whatever it takes to help you help your student. That's what I'm here for, and that's what I'm going to do.
That's so fantastic and encouraging. And I will end today by saying you have support on our side too. The wellness counselors, all the counselors in the district, we're all here to support families and students. So you can reach out to us for anything as well, for referrals, for advice, for a shoulder, whatever you need, we are here to help support you and your family. So we appreciate you watching today, and please remember to be up in your kids' business.